Hello students, today we will do the first chapter of biology, that is life processes. To start with this chapter, let us understand what is life. Life is a cell-based complex system of molecules. It is self-regulatory. Many activities and functions go on inside the living organism for its survival. The study of all these activities, all this function, is a branch of biology which is called physiology. Physiology is a branch of biology which studies all the activities, all the functions going on inside a living organism. Now, so what are life processes? Life processes are all those activities and functions which undergo inside a living organism for its survival, for its growth, for its maintenance. All such processes are called life processes. They are important for any living organism, whether they are unicellular or most complex multicellular, whether they are plants or animals. All these life processes are same for all the organisms. For example, nutrition. We all need food for our survival, for our growth. Similarly, we all respire to obtain oxygen. That oxygen is utilized to release energy from the food. And then another example is transportation. The food and the oxygen obtained during these processes has to be transported to each and every cell of the organism. Likewise, there are many examples of life processes like excretion, like metabolism, the control and coordination, reproduction, etc. We'll study about all of them in class 10th. To start with, let us study nutrition. Nutrition is a process of procuring or obtaining the food and then utilizing it to meet the requirements of the body. Why do we need food? Food had certain important components which are called nutrients. We basically need all these nutrients for our growth and survival. The nutrients can be broadly divided into three categories. First is the energy giving food, which give us energy to carry out these processes. The examples are carbohydrates and fats. Second category is the body building food. Proteins come under this category. They build up the body, they build up the protoplasm. And third comes protective foods. Protective foods which protect us from various diseases and help in maintaining our immunity. So vitamins and minerals come under this category. So let us study again according to these categories. Let us analyze what is the importance of nutrition. Firstly, nutrition is important to obtain energy. All the activities which are undergoing in our body, like even if you are sleeping, your heart is continuously beating. Even when you are sleeping, you are continuously breathing. Food is being digested. Kidneys are filtering the blood. For all these physiological activities, we need energy, and this energy is obtained from the components of the food. Secondly, the body structure. All the protoplasm of the living organism is made from the food components. So, right from the origin of a living organism, it needs food components to build its body structure. Thirdly, growth. The food components are required to make new cells and to increase the volume. So for our growth, for making new cells, we need nutrition. And lastly, also for repair. Food is important for replacement of the worn out tissues or repair of the old tissues. Now, the types of nutrition. Nutrition can be broadly divided into two categories, autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. First, let us study about the autotrophic nutrition in detail. Now, this autotrophic nutrition, it has been derived from the Greek word autos, which means self, and troph, which means nourishment. So, self-nourishment. That means such organisms can make their own food by using simple inorganic components present in our surroundings, in our nature. Such organisms are called autotrophs. So all the green plants and green algae come under this category of autotrophs. The process by which these autotrophs make their own food by utilizing inorganic substances, that is water and carbon dioxide. This process is known as photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a biochemical process. They combine water and carbon dioxide, and the word photo means sunlight. So they use, for the source of energy, sunlight here. In the presence of chlorophyll, they form glucose and oxygen. So this is the basic reaction of photosynthesis. Water plus carbon dioxide, in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, glucose and oxygen are the products of photosynthesis. So from this reaction you can see there are basically 4 raw materials which a plant requires to carry out this process. That is water, carbon dioxide, sunlight and chlorophyll. Now if all these 4 components are available in the green leaf, because the chlorophyll is present in the green leaves, so when all these 4 components, all these 4 raw materials are present, the photosynthesis process takes place. This process takes place in 3 major steps. The first step is absorption of carbon dioxide. First step is absorption of sunlight. How does this happen? The green leaves which have chlorophyll, the chlorophyll has the property to trap the solar energy. So that chlorophyll present in the chloroplast traps the solar energy, then this energy which is now present in the green leaves is utilized to break water molecules into its components, that is hydrogen and oxygen. So 2H2O is broken down H2H2 plus O2. So the solar energy is converted into chemical energy by breaking down water molecules into its components. Then the third step is this hydrogen atom is combined with carbon dioxide to form simple carbohydrates. This is called reduction of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is reduced to form simple carbohydrates, and the oxygen gas, which is not required by the plants, is released into the atmosphere. So these are the 3 basic steps which are involved in the process of photosynthesis. First, absorption of sunlight by chlorophyll, then converting this solar energy into chemical energy, then reduction of carbon dioxide to make simple carbohydrates. Now how does this plant obtain these four raw materials? Let us study in detail. The first raw material is water. Now water, you all know water is present in the soil. So plants absorb this water from the soil through the vascular tissues which are called xylem. Now let us consider it is a plant. So there are roots. Roots have tiny root hairs which are very thin. Water is absorbed into the root hairs by the process of diffusion, that is from high concentration to low concentration. When it enters the root hair, it enters into the xylem tissue, which is the thin pipe-like structures, and it travels upwards towards the leaves through stem and through branches. Once it reaches the leaves, it is utilized for the process of photosynthesis. But since the water has to move upward against the gravity, it needs a pull. How is this pull created? Now consider you are drinking a cold drink with a straw. What do? You have to suck it in. You have to apply some force. Similarly, in plant there are tiny pores called stomata on the underside of the leaf. They evaporate the water. They release the water into the air. That transpiration process creates a suction pull, which helps the water to move upwards. So water is obtained from soil through roots. The vascular tissue involved is known as xylem, and the transpiration, that is release of water in the form of vapors, creates a suction pull. The next raw material is carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is present in air. We all know that. We breathe out carbon dioxide, but plants take in carbon dioxide, and this creates a balance in the atmosphere. So plants obtain carbon dioxide from the air. It enters the leaves through tiny pores called stomata. They are present on the underside of all green leaves. They are very tiny pores. They are surrounded by two guard cells. The guard cells are kidney bean shaped cells, and they have chloroplast in it, which contains chlorophyll. All other epithelial cells do not have chloroplast, only stomata has the chloroplast. So in the epithelial layer, there are many such tiny pores. This opening is called the stoma, and the plural is stomata. The guard cells contain chloroplast, and these cells without the chloroplast are other epithelial cells. So the carbon dioxide enters into the leaf through stomata when the stoma pores are open, and oxygen is released through these pores only. So exchange of gases takes place through stomata. Now, the next raw material required is the sunlight. Sun is the main source of energy for the whole planet, and this light energy, which is trapped by chlorophyll, is utilized to convert it into chemical energy, which we just studied here. This energy is utilized to break the water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. Now, this light energy is the main source. Only plants have the capability to convert it into chemical energy and store it, and when we eat the food, we use that chemical energy for our growth and our development. Now, the next important condition is presence of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a green colored pigment present in the green leaves. It has the property to trap the solar energy. It is present in the plastids. The green colored plastids are called chloroplast. So this whole process of photosynthesis is undergoes inside the chloroplast. That is why chloroplasts are called the kitchen of the cell. Now, there are two raw materials. As you can see in this equation, there are two raw materials, glucose and oxygen. So what happens to these raw materials? The glucose is a simple carbohydrate. So some of the glucose is used to provide energy because plants are also growing. So plants use it to get energy for their growth, for their development, and to carry out various processes. The excess of glucose is converted into starch and stored in the storage organs like roots or stems. For example, potato has stored starch, which comes from the excess glucose. And what about oxygen? Some part of oxygen is utilized for respiration. All living things respire, they need oxygen for respiration. So some part of oxygen is utilized there, while the rest is released into the atmosphere. It's like a waste product for plants, so they release it into the atmosphere. So now you know why plants are so important, because they give us two main things. One is the food, another is oxygen. All other living organisms breathe in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. It is only the plants which give out oxygen and maintain the balance in the atmosphere. And it is only the plants which can make their own food, and all other animals, all heterotrophic organisms depend directly or indirectly on plants for the food. Now let's move on to the next topic, that is heterotrophic nutrition. So we just studied about autotrophic nutrition. The autotrophs can make their own food. Now let us come to heterotrophic nutrition, those organisms which cannot make their own food. This word has been derived from the Greek words heteros, which means others, and trophe, which means nourishment. So, and such organisms which cannot make their own food are called consumers or heterotrophs. So, if they cannot make their own food, from where do they get their food? They depend upon other outside sources to obtain organic food. For example, we eat plant parts, so we are obtaining the food which was prepared by autotrophs and consuming it. This is how heterotrophic nutrition, heterotrophs obtain food. They depend directly or indirectly on autotrophs. The major types of heterotrophic nutrition are saprophytes, parasitic and holozoic. There are three types of heterotrophic nutrition which we will study about. First, saprophytic nutrition. Saprophyte word has been derived from the Greek word sapro, which means rotten, and phyte, which means plants. So you can get an idea. They get the food from the rotten or the dead and decaying parts, decaying organic matter. Food from organic remains, like a fallen branch or the fallen leaves, or maybe a dead animal, dead plants. There are food particles which are trapped inside such matter, and saprophytes obtain nutrients from such matter. So they undergo external digestion. Let us study how. Take an example of a mushroom, which is a fungus. It undergoes saprophytic nutrition. Now, suppose it is growing on a dead wood part. It will release, it has a root shaped structures which are called hyphae. It releases the digestive juices into this root, into this dead part. The food particles will be broken down into small nutrients which are soluble. Then these nutrients are absorbed into the organic body, and this is how they obtain food. So the digestion or the breaking down of nutrient into simple compounds is external. It takes place outside the body. So the saprophytes undergo external digestion. The examples are bread molds or mushrooms, which are fungi. Some bacteria also undergo saprophytic nutrition. What is the importance of saprophyte? First is scavenging. Since they obtain food from the organic matter, so they remove the dead parts from our environment and help in keeping the environment clean. Second, they also help in completing the nutrient cycle. Certain organic and inorganic components are trapped in these dead parts. So they release these nutrients and help in completing the nutrient cycles. Next is parasitic nutrition. This has been derived from the Greek words para, which means other, and site, which means food. So they obtain food from other living organisms. This is the main difference between saprophyte and parasite. They obtain food from dead and decaying parts, while parasites obtain food from other living organisms. Such living organisms are called hosts. So host provides them food and shelter. In return, the parasite sometimes harms the host. It may cause diseases or ailments. So examples are cuscuta, which is called amar bale in Hindi, and leeches, some worms, which live either on the body of some living organisms or inside their body and obtain the ready-made food from them. Such nutrition is called parasitic nutrition. The third one is holozoic nutrition. It is again been derived from the Greek words holo, which means whole, and zoon, which means animal. Such animals obtain the whole food. They ingest the whole food, digest it into simple particles and absorb the nutrients. This is why the word whole, they obtain the whole food inside, ingest it. And unlike saprophyte, where external digestion takes place, in holozoic, internal digestion takes place and nutrients are absorbed for their growth and for their development. Let us study about holozoic nutrition in amoeba. As you all know, amoeba does not have any fixed shape. It has a flexible cell membrane. So whenever there is some food particle, which if amoeba comes in contact with the food particles, it grows projections. These projections are called pseudopodia. It grows projections around the food particles. Then this food particle is engulfed inside and a food vacuole is made. This is the food vacuole. These are pseudopodias. Then these pseudopodia combine. The whole cell is again and food is ingested. This food vacuole. This is called food vacuole. Now inside the food vacuole, what happens? The digestive juices are released. These digestive juices break down the food into simple soluble nutrients. The nutrients which are required by the cell, they are absorbed within the cell. After digestion, the nutrients are absorbed into the cell. Now what remains is the undigested, unwanted food remain. That food remain is then ejected out of the cell again by creating a projection. It is ejected. So these are the steps involved in holozoic nutrition of amoeba. Now after studying this, we can easily say what are the 5 steps involved in holozoic nutrition. First is ingestion, digestion, assimilation and egestion. Now let us study, that is, first is ingestion. Ingestion means taking in food or procuring the food, obtaining the food and taking it inside the body through various processes. Like human beings, we have a mouth, we have a fixed opening, we take in the food. Similarly, amoeba, they do not have a fixed opening, but they create pseudopodia to obtain food. This step is called ingestion. Next is digestion. This means the food, the complex organic food, is broken down into simple soluble compounds. The simple compounds, they are soluble, which can be easily absorbed and utilized. That is why digestion is important. The complex food material is broken down into simple materials. For example, the starch is broken down into glucose molecules. Fats is broken down into fatty acids. Proteins into peptodes or amino acids. Likewise, all the nutrients are broken down into simpler forms which can be easily absorbed. The next step is absorption. All those nutrients which are being digested, now they are absorbed into the body. In human beings, they are absorbed into the blood. In amoeba, we just saw, they are absorbed into the cell body. Right? So this process is called absorption, when from the vacuole, the food enters the main body. Next is assimilation. When the nutrients reach each and every cell of a multicellular organism, it is being utilized, it is being used to release energy. That process is called assimilation. That is the main step where the food is being utilized for growth, for development, for various other activities. And last step is egestion. Egestion, in which the undigested food material, the roughage which is not required by the body, is ejected out of the body. It is excreted out in the form of fecal matter. So these are the 5 steps of holozoic nutrition. Now the next topic which we'll take up is holozoic nutrition in human beings. It is the process of holozoic nutrition in human beings. In humans, there is a continuous tubular pipe right from the buccal cavity till anus, which consists of many organs and associated glands. This continuous path is known as the alimentary canal. All the parts, all the organs and the glands are marked here. Let's study all of these. The first part is the buccal cavity or the oral cavity. This, we ingest food, we intake food through this opening which is called the buccal cavity. The 3 main parts of this buccal cavity are teeth, salivary glands and tongue. We have a set of 32 teeth. These teeth help in chewing and grinding the food. So it breaks the food particles into smaller particles. Then there are 3 pairs of salivary glands present in the buccal cavity. These salivary glands release saliva. The saliva contains enzyme called salivary amylase. This salivary amylase breaks down the carbohydrate into glucose. So if you are eating starch like rice or potato and you are chewing it for a few minutes, it will be completely converted into glucose. So try it. Chew a spoonful of rice for a few minutes, it will start tasting sweet because it gets converted into glucose. So digestion process starts in the mouth itself. Next organ is the tongue. The tongue is a muscular organ present in the buccal cavity. It has taste buds and it helps in mixing the food with the saliva. It also helps in swallowing the food into the esophagus. Now from buccal cavity, the food enters the esophagus. Esophagus is a long tube which connects the buccal cavity to the stomach. It passes through thorax and abdomen and then through the diaphragm and attaches it to the stomach. In the esophagus, there is a rhythmic contraction and relaxation which pushes the food forward. Now as the food enters, there is a contraction here, if you can see. There is a contraction here. This pushes the food downward. Food does not come up, it pushes the food downward. This type of movement is called peristalsis. Peristalsis movement is continues through the muscular movement throughout the alimentary canal. Now, after the food enters the stomach is a J-shaped muscular organ. It expands when food enters it. Now, when food enters the stomach churns it and converts it into a semi-solid known as chyme. The inner lining of the stomach secretes certain juices known as gastric juices, which gets mixed up with the food. The three main components of gastric juice are, firstly, hydrochloric acid. It's a dilute acid. The function of hydrochloric acid is to make the food acidic, to kill the bacteria and to soften the food. Then, secondly, it secretes mucus. Mucus helps in protecting the inner lining of the stomach from the harmful effect of corrosive effect of the acid. And thirdly, it secretes an enzyme called pepsin. The pepsin enzyme helps to break the protein molecules into smaller peptones. But the pepsin is active only in acidic medium. So that's the function of hydrochloric acid. It makes the food acidic and activates the pepsin which can act on the food. Now once the chyme is made, the food is churned and mixed with gastric juices, the food enters into the small intestine. This part of small intestine is called duodenum. Now the entry of food from the stomach to the duodenum is controlled by a sphincter muscle present here. Now slowly the food is entering into the duodenum. At duodenum you can see there are two glands on the either side of the stomach. This one is the liver and this is the gallbladder. This one is pancreas. Now the liver is the largest organ of our body. It secretes a juice which is known as bile. Bile is temporarily stored in gallbladder. Now as food enters the stomach, the gallbladder releases bile into the duodenum. What is the function of bile? It breaks down the fat molecules into smaller fat globules. The large droplets of fats are broken into smaller fat globules. This process is known as emulsification, breaking of fat molecules, fat droplets into smaller molecules. This helps in digestion of fat in the small intestine. And next one is pancreas, the other gland which also secretes the pancreatic juices into the duodenum. The pancreatic juices contain three main enzymes. First is trypsin. Trypsin breaks the proteins or the peptones into amino acids. Amino acids are the water soluble nutrients which can be easily absorbed through small intestine. Another enzyme is amylase, which breaks the carbohydrates into glucose, fructose, maltose, the simpler carbohydrates. And third one is lipase, which breaks the fat molecules into fatty acids and glycerol. So all the nutrients, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, they are broken down into simple soluble forms of the nutrients which can be easily absorbed. So the pancreas and the liver, they secrete their juices through a common duct into the duodenum. Then the food along with these secretions enters the small intestine. The small intestine is highly coiled, long tubular structure. It is about 6 meters long in human beings. It is longer in herbivorous animals because a lot of cellulose has to be digested, and it is shorter in carnivorous animals. So this tubule, as food passes through this small intestine, it is being completely digested through bile, through through pancreatic juices, and intestines themselves secrete intestinal juices which also contain digestive enzymes. So by the action of all these enzymes, food is completely broken down into simple molecules. The next step is absorption. Now in small intestine, once the food is completely digested, it is absorbed into the blood. A unique feature, a very important feature of small intestine is the inner lining of small intestine has projections, very tiny projections called villi. These projections increase the surface area for absorption of nutrients. These projections are richly supplied with blood vessels. Right? So once the food particles are digested, they are absorbed into the blood. And through blood, they are collected and carried to the liver for assimilation. So complete ingestion, then complete digestion, absorption and assimilation. Once all the nutrients are absorbed into the blood and transported to other parts of the body, what remains is the undigested part of the food, which is called the roughage. That roughage enters into the large intestine, which is also called colon. The ascending colon, transverse colon and descending colon. There is also a vestigial organ known as appendix in the beginning of large intestine. Now inside the large intestine, only the water is being absorbed, rest of the roughage is just pushed forward and the undigested food is released, is excreted through anus. That is in the form of a fecal matter. So the last step of the whole nutrition is egestion. This also occurs through anus. So this is the whole digestive system in human beings. So students, in this video I'll take up some important questions from the chapter Life Processes. So the first topic, nutrition in humans. Question number 1. Draw the diagram of human alimentary canal. As you know, alimentary canal is the digestive system in human beings right from the mouth till the rectum through which the food passes. So to draw the diagram, first just draw a little part of the face, so to show that actually this process starts right from the mouth. Then there is an esophagus, which is the food pipe. Food pipe ends into a C-shaped organ called the stomach, which is a muscular organ. Then the muscular or this stomach opens up into a tube-like structure called the intestine. The first part of small intestine is the duodenum. Then before you draw this small intestine, first draw the large intestine. So this duodenum then extends into a highly coiled structure, the small intestine, and in the end it gets attached to the large intestine or the colon. This is the large intestine, the rectum and the anus where the alimentary canal ends. Apart from these main organs, there are two associated glands, main glands. One is the liver near the stomach, right? It's the largest organ of our body with a small gallbladder. And apart from this, there is also a pancreas, right where there is duodenum. It also opens up into the duodenum. So this is the alimentary canal. You can label the parts: esophagus, stomach, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, small intestine and large intestines. This is the alimentary canal of human beings. Question number 2. What is the role of saliva in digestion? Actually, as we intake the food, the digestion process starts in the mouth itself. In our oral cavity, there are three pairs of salivary glands and they release the liquid called saliva. This saliva contains an enzyme called salivary amylase. This salivary amylase breaks down the complex carbohydrates like starch into simple carbohydrates like glucose and maltose. So when these complex carbohydrates are broken down into simple molecules, it becomes easy for the body to absorb them and their assimilation, their usage. So the role of saliva is breaking down of complex carbohydrates into simple glucose and maltose molecules. So the digestion process starts itself in our mouth. We need to chew the food properly so that saliva gets mixed up in the mouth. Question number 3. What is the role of hydrochloric acid secreted by stomach? As I told you, this esophagus ends up into the C-shaped muscular organ called stomach. Stomach secretes the gastric juices, which contains 3 main components: the hydrochloric acid, mucus, and the enzyme pepsin. So this hydrochloric acid basically, firstly, it kills the bacteria or the pathogens present in the food. Secondly, it softens the food. While the food is being churned in the stomach, it softens the food. Thirdly, it makes the food acidic, and the enzyme pepsin, it becomes active only in the acidic medium. The enzyme pepsin, which breaks down the proteins into simple compounds, amino acids and peptones, it can act only in the acidic medium. So this acidic medium is provided by the hydrochloric acid. Next question. How are fats digested in our body? Now the fat molecules are quite big as compared to carbohydrates and proteins. So firstly, and fats are not soluble in water. So here comes the role of liver. Liver secretes a juice called the bile, which is temporarily stored in the gallbladder. And then when food enters from the stomach into the duodenum, the bile is released from the gallbladder. This bile actually emulsifies the fat molecules. Emulsification is breaking down the fat molecules into tiny droplets. So this emulsification is done by the bile. So for the digestion of fat, first emulsification occurs with the help of bile when fat molecules are broken down into tiny droplets. Secondly, there are enzymes secreted by pancreas and small intestine, the lipase enzyme, which breaks down the fat molecules into smaller water-soluble absorbable forms, that is fatty acids and glycerols. This is how the fats are digested in our body. Next question. What are digestive enzymes and what is their function? What is their role played in digestion? Digestive enzymes are the chemicals secreted by exocrine glands in the alimentary canal. They help in breaking down the nutrients into smaller molecules which are soluble in water and which are in the absorbable forms, so that the nutrients get absorbed into the blood and they are transported to each and every cell of the body for utilization. Next, how does the structure of small intestine help in absorption of nutrients? So I just told you, this small intestine is a highly coiled structure, right? So it is a double membrane structure. The inner lining of the small intestine has tiny finger-like projections which are called villi. These are the villi. These villi, first of all, they increase the surface area. There is lot of area for the absorption of nutrients. Secondly, they are highly thin-walled so that the nutrients can pass through this wall. Moreover, these villi are richly supplied by the blood vessels. These arteries and veins forming the capillaries in the villi. So as the nutrients get digested in the small intestine, they enter from the villi and into the blood vessels. Then from the blood vessels they are carried to all the cells, all the tissues of the body. So the structure of small intestine which helps in absorption is, first you have to explain the presence of villi, which are tiny finger-like projections in the inner wall of small intestine, and they increase the surface area for absorption. Secondly, the small intestine are richly supplied by the blood vessels, which helps in absorption of the nutrients from the small intestine into the blood. So that's all from this topic, nutrition. Let's move on to the next topic. So students, the next topic, nutrition in plants. So some important questions from this topic. Question number 1. Differentiate between autotrophic and heterotrophic mode of nutrition. As you must have seen in my previous video, autotrophic mode of nutrition These are performed by the organisms which can make their own food by using simple inorganic substances, that is carbon dioxide and water, by utilizing the solar energy. While the heterotrophic mode of nutrition, the organisms cannot make their own food, so they depend upon autotrophs to obtain the nutrients. So autotrophic mode of nutrition is performed by green plants and green algae, while heterotrophic mode of nutrition is performed by all animals including fungus and even humans. We are heterotrophs. Question number 2. What are the necessary conditions for the autotrophic nutrition and what are the byproduct? So for this question, you can also give the equation for photosynthesis. That is, they use carbon dioxide and water and utilize the sunlight or the solar energy, and the products formed are oxygen and glucose. So what are the necessary conditions for autotrophic nutrition? First is the presence of two raw materials, that is carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil. Then absorption of sunlight to utilize the solar energy. And one more thing is the presence of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the green colored pigment present in the leaves. This chlorophyll helps in the absorption of solar energy. It traps the solar energy, and this energy is utilized to perform this reaction. So the byproducts are oxygen and glucose. Actually what happens in a plant, whatever, they also need glucose for their growth and development. They also need oxygen for respiration. But the rate of photosynthesis is higher than their requirement. So both the products are produced in excess. So whatever extra glucose is produced, it is converted into the complex other nutrients like starch, and then it is stored in the storage organs of the plant. And whatever extra oxygen is produced, it is released into the air through the pores called stomata. So this is the answer for the second question. Third, how do plants obtain raw material required for photosynthesis? Now I just told you plants need carbon dioxide and water. So how do they obtain these two raw materials? So basically, you know, the leaves, there are tiny pores on the underside of the leaves called stomata. So carbon dioxide is absorbed from the air through stomata. Then there are roots, there are tiny roots here, and water molecules are present in the soil. So these root hairs absorb the water enters into the root hair through diffusion. This water also contains the soluble minerals. So water and minerals, they are absorbed from the root and they are transported through xylem tissue into the leaf. So carbon dioxide from air, water and minerals from the roots, and sunlight, solar energy from sun, which is trapped by the chlorophyll. This is how the leaf gets all the raw material to perform the process of photosynthesis. Next question. Leaves of a potted plant are covered with Vaseline. Now, will this plant remain healthy for long? Give reason. Now, Vaseline is not water soluble. So, if you cover the leaf with a Vaseline layer or any other waxy layer, what will happen? The tiny pores called the stomata, they will get blocked, right? So, first let me draw the structure of stomata. Stomata are actually pores which are surrounded by two guard cells. These are two guard cells. These guard cells contain chlorophyll as well as the nucleus. So, chloroplast and nucleus. Apart from this, you can also draw other epidermal cells which do not contain chlorophyll, although they do have nucleus, right? So these pores are called the stomata. Now what happens if you cover this leaf with a waxy coating? What will happen? These pores will get blocked and exchange of gases will not take place. During photosynthesis, carbon dioxide enters the leaf and oxygen comes out of this leaf. So first thing, exchange of gases required for photosynthesis will not take place. Second, another important function of stomata is this water, it enters, it has to travel anti-gravity, you know, it is going upward. So you need a suction pull so that this water diffuses in an upward direction. Take a simple example. There is a straw in a glass of water, all right, and you want to drink that drink, or whether it's a cold drink or water, you want to have it through straw. Now you have to suck it from the upper end, then only water will come upward. Similarly, when the water is to be supplied to the leaves, there has to be a suction pull. That suction pull is actually provided by the transpiration process which occurs in stomata. Transpiration is removing the excess water through these tiny pores in the form of vapors. So excess water leaves the stomata, which creates a suction pull for the water to travel upwards. So if these stomata are blocked, firstly, exchange of gases will not take place. Secondly, transpiration will not occur. So the plant will not remain healthy for long, for sure. Right? So that's all from this topic. Let's move on to the next topic.